While explaining the stats in my combat guide, I couldn't stop thinking, how far can we push it? So today, we're going to find out. We're going to deal the highest numbers and take the lowest numbers, using every method currently available in game. And there were surprisingly a lot of new ones added in 1.6. First, we're going to max out our attack stat, which involves having the strongest weapon possible, the Infinity Gavel. Already, we're starting with 100 to 120 damage. We've got quite a few enchants to do to it. First of all, we're going to enchant it with 3 rubies. Each of those increase the damage by around 10%. Next, for its real enchantment, we're going to be looking for Bug Killer, and we got it on the first try. That will double our damage to anything labeled as a bug. There are a couple of other enchantments that increase damage to specific creatures, like Crusader, but all of those numbers are lower than a double increase. Now, there is a new type of enchantment in 1.6, innate enchantments, and you can get them at the Forge using a Dragon Tooth instead of a Prismatic Shard. Unfortunately, this does not apply to the Infinity weapons or the Galaxy weapons. And even if we were able to get the best attack boost on the Dragon Tooth Club, which is the second strongest weapon, it still would be weaker than the Infinity Gavel without the innate enchantment. So we won't be using it this time. We do still have a few more enchantments to make. We're going to combine the Warrior Ring and an Iridium Band. It could also be a Ruby Ring, doesn't make a difference. Then we're going to combine another Iridium Band with a Ruby Ring. All of these rings altogether give us a 30% increase to our attack, and we'll get Warrior Energy sometimes after slaying a monster, which is a flat 30 damage buff. Next, we're headed to the sewers because we're going to reset our combat professions. In order, we're going to make sure that we have the Fighter and then the Brute professions, giving us a 25% boost to attack power total. Now, to make sure we get the absolute most damage we possibly can, it needs to be the Desert Festival, because this chef here can cook you a meal that gives you a food buff separate from your regular food buff. So what we need to do is have any extremely sharp cheddar meal, so I can choose anything on the second choice, rich marinara. That will give us an attack buff, +3 attack. And we can combine that with any of our own attack buffs from our food. So I'm going to eat a magic rock candy, which gives us the highest out of all of them, giving us another 5. And now we're headed off to the mines. So now that we're here, we're basically looking for any bug to slay so that we can get that double damage bonus. In fact, I'm going to use a monster musk so we can find a couple more of them. Oh, here we go. All right, let's try to see the damage numbers. 563. 527, 531, 531. I'm thinking that 563 might be the highest we're gonna see. Yep, that looks like 563 is the highest amount of damage we could hit for. Now, I will tell you, that's not the highest amount of damage you can hit, period, because that's not accounting critical hits, but we'll get there. Next up, we're going to be maxing out our defense to take as little damage as possible, and surprisingly, the Dwarf Dagger offers the best defense at 6. Wouldn't have expected it to be a dagger. We will, of course, be enchanting it with 3 topaz, each adding 1 point of defense per level, giving us a total of 9 so far. And we will be combining crab shell and topaz rings. Crab shells add 5 defense and topaz rings add 1, which is a new addition with 1.6 once again. Now, before we move on, you may say, well, there's an innate enchantment for defense. Turns out, no matter how much I test it, I can't seem to get a defense innate enchantment on my Dwarf Dagger. And there seems to be similar protections for all sorts of weapons. Nothing can surpass whatever has the best stat in something. There's a lot of similar rules like this, and we will be encountering this more. We're going to swap up our professions once again. This time we'll be going for Fighter and then Defender, which doesn't increase our defense, but increases our HP, which increases the amount of hits we can take. One last piece of equipment, the Dragon Scale Boots offer the highest defense bonus at 7. You may recall that book powers were added to Stardew Valley in 1.6, and Jack Be Nimble, Jack Be Thick, which you can find from hoeing artifact spots, gives 1 point of defense. Taking a trip to the chef again, we need the Hearty Beans meal, and as always, you can choose whatever for the second stat. +3 defense from that, and we're gonna be boring, having the magic rock candy. Altogether, we have a whopping total of 37 defense. Defense calculations are pretty easy. 1 point of defense is 1 point of damage you won't take per hit. So now, I want to test this defense against the highest hitting monster in the game, the Dangerous Mummy. It can hit up to 55 damage. Already found one here. So let's see what it hits us for. 16, 12, 12, 25, 18, 16. So it cuts down the damage of the strongest enemy in the game almost to a third. Did I just take a 1 there? I think I took a 1. Can I take one more hit? Yeah, there we go. I'm gonna count how many times I took hits there in post so you can see how many hits you can take from the strongest enemy in the game now that you have maxed out your defense. The next stat we're going to test is speed, and this one's actually split into 2 different categories. There's movement speed, which is the speed of your character, and weapon speed, which is the swing speed of your weapon, which has no difference when it comes to daggers. You can stab as fast as you can click the mouse. Most movement speed upgrades affect the speed of your weapon as well, so we'll be going over that first. We need to get the Blessing of Speed from the Statue of Blessings, and since this is completely RNG, we'll be making sure we get that first, and that's not it. Okay, that took a lot longer than expected for a 0.5 speed buff, half of what coffee gives you. Next, you're going to make sure you have a horse and give it a carrot. That'll increase its speed for the day. There's 3 books that we want to have for this. Way of the Winds, part 1 and 2, increase your base movement speed, and Horse the Book increases the speed of your horse. There are a bunch of buffs that you can get from monsters, so you're going to want to make sure that monsters are able to spawn on your farm. If they can't, offer Strange Bun to the Dark Shrine of Night Terrors, and they'll start showing up. And you can offer another Strange Bun if you want them to stop. To utilize those monsters, we're going to have 2 buffs going. 1 buff from the Savage Ring, giving us a short speed boost whenever we slay a monster, and the Golden Spur, which gives us a speed boost after we get a critical hit. And as such, I will be using the Iridium Needle. Desert Festival again, we want Uncomfortably Hot Sauce. You'll notice that it's not an option for your first buff here, so just choose anything then, and then for the second option, choose Uncomfortably Hot Sauce. This will give us a +1 speed boost. And we're going to pair that with Crab Cakes. All food buffs give the same amount of speed. This is just the one that takes the longest. We have 16 minutes here. And now we're back at the farm at night. I've waited until enemies start spawning. Now I'm going to drink my triple shot espresso, giving us another speed boost. And now I'm gonna pause because I need to explain. When I get a critical hit and knock out a monster at the same time, I'm going to hop onto my horse so I still have those speed boosts, and we're going to start running on a path on the farm because that gives a +0.1 speed boost. Let's see if we can pull it off. Well, let's equip our weapon first. There's our crit. I've not knocked out an enemy yet. There we go. There it is. Max speed. Absolutely zooming. So exactly how fast is that? For reference, our base speed is 2, and currently we have a 14.6 speed buff, meaning we are moving at 830% of our base speed. Now there is one buff that we're not utilizing here, and that's the buff that you can get from the Calico statues during the Desert Festival. Unfortunately, that wears off once you leave, and all the buffs we get from being on our horse and on a farm path outweigh that buff that we would get from the statue. Now we're quickly going to shift into weapon speed buffs now. All of the buffs that you see up here we are going to keep because those all also increase your weapon speed. Now I want to try this out with 2 different weapons. We're going to be using the Galaxy Sword with a +4 speed. It has the fastest swing speed of any sword. And then the Lead Rod. Naturally, clubs have a -8 speed stat when compared to swords, and this has an additional -4 on top of that, and I want to see how fast we can get to swinging this thing. Now we have a lot of work to do at the forge here. First off, we're going to forge both of our weapons with 3 emeralds, each of which increase the speed by 10%. Next, we are going to make use of innate enchantments. Now, once again, the Galaxy Sword cannot use them. The Lead Rod, however, can, and we're going to be looking for a +4 speed enchantment. Actually, I'm reading the wiki here. We might not be able to get a +4 speed on the lead rod, because the natural speed of the weapon determines if you can get a higher speed stat with innate enchantments, which is a very weird way to do it. I think we might be capped out at +2. All right, I got the +2. I don't think +3 is possible. The wiki states it's capped out under your natural speed, so since we have a +3 speed, I'm thinking +2 is our max. And then we have a couple of ring enchantments to do. Savage Ring for the speed buff. Emerald Ring increases weapon speed by 10%, so we're going to combine those. And then an Aquamarine, just so I have a higher chance of getting a crit, and Emerald Ring. All right, I am here at the Skull Cavern. I have all of our pre-existing speed buffs. I have the Golden Spur plus the Savage Ring equipped, and I've also brought an Iridium Needle so that we can try and proc that Golden Spur as easy as possible. Now I need to go into the Skull Cavern and look for a Calico statue that gives me a speed buff, so guess I'll be back. There it is, holy moly. Okay, that took long enough. Okay, re-up on my triple shot espresso and crab cakes here. Then we're going to try and get a critical hit and a knockout at the same time. Okay, we have it. The swing speed does not feel that much different for the Galaxy Sword, but the lead rod feels around the same. Let's get that again. There we go. That feels like it's swinging at about the same speed as the Galaxy Sword. Time to explain the math of the weapon speed buffs. So, weapon speed determines how long it takes until you can swing the weapon again. For swords, naturally, it is 400 milliseconds. And for clubs, it's 720 milliseconds. Each point of weapon speed that we add will reduce that time by 40 milliseconds. So the Galaxy Sword naturally has a swing speed of 240 thanks to the +4 weapon speed it already has. Turns out, that's the limit. The Galaxy Sword is not different at all with any weapon speed buffs. With all of the speed buffs we were able to accumulate, we got the lead rod to +13 speed. 5 from the enchantments to the rod, and 8 from our overhead buffs. This means not only had we hit the speed limit, but one of those speed buffs was unnecessary. And that's not even counting the 2 emerald rings that are essentially doing nothing. If you're curious, if that 1 extra speed buff and the 2 emerald rings were allowed to work, our swing speed would be 160 milliseconds as opposed to 240. All right, after that setup, I need a little bit of a break, so we're going to be doing maxed out knockback. Now this depends on the weight of the weapon, and clubs, just like swing speed, have a naturally higher weight. So the dwarf hammer naturally has 15 weight plus the 5 that it comes with, so that's 20 weight altogether. Up here at the forge, we are going to enchant it with 3 amethysts. Its weight stat is now +25, so in addition to the 15 it normally has, it's at 40. Don't need to stop there though. There is a weight increasing innate enchantment, so we're looking for a... Wait, I've made a mistake. There's not a weight increasing enchantment, there's a weight decreasing enchantment, so we're not doing innate enchantments again. And last step, simple as, we just equip 2 amethyst rings. Nothing else increases knockback. So naturally, I think I'm going to try and find a ghost as those naturally get knocked. Gone. Oh my goodness, look at this. They're essentially teleporting away. All right, yeah, I need to find a ghost. All right, here they are, the ghosts. I feel like I should zoom out so that we can get the full majesty of this. How far did he go? He's just now getting back on screen. Let's get a horizontal one. Just barely knocked off screen that way. That is insane. I actually love this. If you want a comparison, I got a dagger with no knockback here. Like, it's like 3 tiles away, as opposed to this. Now on to maxing out our crit chance. Of course, we will be using the Iridium Needle with a natural +6 crit chance. It may be a little confusing what exactly that means. Essentially, this weapon has a 10% chance to crit. First things first, we're off to the forge to enchant it with 3 aquamarines. Now we're sitting at a plus 14 crit chance. We're not done yet though, because we should be able to, so raising the critical hit chance also raises the level of the dagger, passing level 15 and making innate enchantments impossible. The increase we get from aquamarine enchants are higher than anything the innate enchantments get, so we'll keep it there. This may be controversial. The Wicked Chris might be able to have a higher crit chance than the Iridium Needle, thanks to it having a 6% natural crit chance, and it can get that innate enchantment. Alright, so I've done around 200 innate enchantments here. I have not been able to get anything over +2 crit chance. +3 crit chance should be possible, but I'm wondering if there's some kind of limiter to where weapons just won't get over 10% so as to not surpass the Iridium Needle. The wiki doesn't explain anything like that. That's just my personal theory. If any of you have been able to get that +3 on a Wicked Chris, please let me know. But otherwise, I'm gonna say that the Iridium Needle's the way to go. Well, moving on, not only is critical hit chance affected by your crit chance, but it's also affected by your luck. So I'm going to be combining 2 aquamarine rings with 2 lucky rings, giving us plus 20% chance to critically strike and +2 luck. It is back to the old grind. We need yet another blessing. This time we need the Blessing of Fangs, and unfortunately, it might be a while once again. There it is, Blessing of Fangs plus 10% critical strike chance. Now we can get moving. We do also want the profession Scout to get a 50% increased critical strike chance. Your level 10 profession doesn't matter, it doesn't affect strike chance, just power. And who would have guessed it? We are back at the chef again. We want to choose the rare fruit meal this time. Second choice doesn't matter. That will give us an additional +3 points of luck. We have the magic rock candy, another 5 points of luck, and now ginger ale made with key seasoning to give us 2 luck instead of 1. Altogether, that is 10 extra points of luck, 12 if you count the 2 combined rings. Now, I could do all the math. Calculating critical hit chance is very complicated, but I'm going to test it. I'm going to attack enemies, let's say 1,000 times, and we'll see how many of those are critical hits. Actually, you know what? I'll just go until all of my buffs wear out. I've realized that I can just test on this bug because it'll never get knocked out, but it will show if I get a critical hit or not. And there goes one of my buffs. So I'm gonna go ahead and count all of those in post. Post coming at you. We got 622 critical hits and 144 misses for 766 attacks total. Simple division, 622 divided by 766 makes it an 81.2% crit rate. But let's go through the calculations just to see if that's good. So with the Iridium Needle, we're starting at 10%. Forging with Aquamarines adds a flat 13.8%, getting us to 23.8%. Next in the calculations are the Aquamarine rings. Multiplying the chance by 1.2, getting us to 28.56%. After that, we can add the Statue of Blessings buff, which is a flat 10%. 38.56 now. Next up is the buff from Scout, which is a 1.5 times multiplier. We are now at 57.84. And last are all of our luck buffs, each adding a flat 2.5%. We are currently at a 12 luck buff, adding 30% to our final number. This gives us a critical hit rate of 87.84%, which is a little alarmingly over what we got from the test, but maybe I miscounted. Maybe it just wasn't enough hits to accurately determine the chance. Regardless, there you have it. The next stat we're going to look at is crit power. This one will be a little bit more simple than chance. Once again, we are using the Iridium Needle at plus 200 crit power. We're going to forge it with 3 jade, each adding a couple of points of crit power each. Total, we end up with 215. We'll slap on 2 jade rings, increasing critical power by 10% each. I already have it, but if you don't already, you'll want the Desperado profession, adding a ×2 multiplier. So there is an innate enchantment for crit power, but remember how we couldn't forge it with the Iridium Needle before when we were doing crit chance? Turns out, crit power doesn't increase your level. I don't know if that's an oversight or on purpose, but because of that, we will be able to go for crit power. There it is, already 2 attempts. 290 total. And all that's left is to test it out in some slimes. I've made sure that I have no damage upgrades. All the extra damage is going to come only from crit power. Let's see what we can get. 1,250. 1,300. 1,378. I was literally about to say, oh, I think we hit the max already, but there you go. It's crazy that the base Iridium Needle can't even one-shot most of the enemies on these floors. All right, yeah, I think I've tested enough. So now I want to calculate out our multiplier, as stated by the wiki, just to see if everything lines up. So say we're dealing max damage with the Iridium Needle at 35. We'll apply the formula of our crit damage from our base crit power, which is 215. This is a 7.3 times multiplier, setting us at 255.5 damage. Next, we multiply in the 2 buffs from the Jade Rings and the 75 crit power from our innate enchantment, which seems to work differently from our regular crit power. Now our expected damage is 689.85. Last, we multiply that by 2 for the Desperado profession. So the max number we should be able to hit is 1,379.7. That's almost exactly what we hit, and that's an over 39 times multiplier. Now there is one last thing I want to test. I want to try and get the highest damage number I possibly can. I did actually attempt this before, but it was on 1.5, and I forgot the bug killer enchantment. I was able to hit 1,305, and I think we can beat that. First of all, my weapon of choice is going to be the Dragon Tooth Club, because it has crit power to start, and it can be enchanted with innate enchantments, unlike the Infinity Gavel. Now, just like with the Iridium Needle before, if we enchant it with even a single ruby, it will go to level 15 and no longer be innate enchantable, so we'll instead be using Jades to get its crit power up. So the question here is, am I going for the +5 attack increase, or am I going for a 75 increase in crit power? And I think the answer is I'm going for crit power. There it is. So with that crit power increase, that increases my damage by 2.5 times. Now there's a lot of calculations to be done, because if we increase our base damage, that also gets increased by a crit. So I think the crit power is more advantageous here. Luckily, as far as rings go, we don't need to choose. We can combine a warrior ring with a jade ring, and then another jade ring with a ruby ring. We do have one last enchantment to put on our Dragon Tooth Club, and that is Bug Killer. There it is. Look at this absolute beast of a club. Y'all know what it is. Back at the chef, we gotta get the extremely sharp cheddar for the attack increase. And then a magic rock candy for another 5 attack increase. Now we start slaying bugs until we get a critical hit with our warrior ring buff. 4,348. Already, we have beaten the amount we hit for last time. Let's see if we can get anything higher than that. 4,720. A few more attempts. 5,136. The range that this can hit is so wide. All right, I've gotten quite a few more critical hits under that effect, and I don't think it's getting much higher than 5,136. I think I'm ready to call that the highest number. Nope, 5,226. There it is. Mind you, the enemy with the most HP in the game would be a special dangerous purple slime, which would sit at 2,460 HP. Well, that'll do it. That was a lot of math. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next video, and good night.